So we're just going to start. Louise, before we start, I just want to say that we're going to be recording today and photographs are going to be taken. If you're not happy with this, could you please turn off your video or let Louise know, make it known to Louise now so she can help you turn off your video. For those of you who have submitted questions, I'm going to say your name in the order that you submitted them, and Louise will try and find you so that you can ask the questions and be unmuted. And everyone will be muted unless it's your time to speak. But for now, it's a real honour today to have Maureen with us. Maureen Diane Lipman, CBE, wow. Is an English film, theatre, radio and TV actress. She's a columnist, a comedian, and was born on the 10th of May. I decided not to say the year in case you might not want me to, so you can say that. So Maureen was born on the 10th of May in Kingston upon Hull and was the wife of the amazing Jack Rosenthal. Her movies have included Educating Rita, Up the Junction, The Pianist, Oklahoma, to name but a few. I ran out of space, so I'll leave that to Maureen to tell us more. But for me personally, and I'm sure lots of you, I grew up with BT. And I actually feel, Maureen, that you're like a long lost auntie of mine. So I feel like I know you. So if I'm just going to chat away, please forgive me because I just feel like you're an auntie. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Maureen. And after you've spoken, if it's okay with you, we've got some very keen tenants here today who would like to ask you some questions. So thank you very much. And over to you, Maureen.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm, 1946, in case any of you are worrying. I ain't going to tell me I've got lipstick on my teeth. Well, here I am in my little apartment in W2, in what is about what we're talking about the 15th week of lockdown, is it? Anyone can tell me the exact date? I can't remember, but how are you all faring? Because I know there's about 100 of you out there today, which is fabulous, and thank you for joining me. And I'm trying to put myself empathetically in your shoes because I'm now beginning to find it a bit of a bound. I must say, at first, I thought it was really a good idea, like a hiatus in the middle of the madness that is most of our lives, and certainly mine. I think I can manage it all.
Yeah, if she's thin.
What's that? I'm thinner in real life.
I think we need to mute June.
Trying to find her. Hold on.
June Leader is having a bit of a conversation with her hubby.
If June's thinking that,
I'm here. I'm here.
In real life, yeah, everybody says that. You know, they say, "Oh, you look better than you do on the telly," and I never know whether that's a compliment or not. I always say, "Oh, well, it's nice to know I look better to one person than I do to 10 million." But there you go. Everybody, it's a funny thing being a face because everybody always feels that they have to say something about your physical appearance when they meet you. And it's sort of like nervousness. I mean, having met the Queen, I know what it's like. I did ask Barbara Dixon, who'd been to meet the Queen, how you address her. And she said, oh, you call her Ma'am to rhyme with Pam. And I ended up calling her Pam, which was not my finest nerve. Well, there were worse, actually. I did throw a boiled potato across the 1834 room as well. So, yeah. Nerves. People do get nervous when they meet someone they've seen on the telly, and I can understand, but they feel absolutely, first of all, honor bound to hold you. So I'm quite enjoying this, meter distance, because they always want to do that. And Maureen, I had a cousin, you once, listen, and they have no conception that for most of my youth, I had some sort of, I couldn't bear to be touched. If anyone touched me, I had to touch them back. So it's one of those things, like a puberty thing that went on. I couldn't bear it. If anyone said, I had to say, afterwards. So So my nightmare is somebody standing very close to me and giving me the, you know, and holding me and nudging me, and it's like they can't help doing it. So this, you know, the advantages of being in this lockdown state have been many for me, because, you know, I slowed down. I stopped running all the time. I began to paint, I began to draw, I began to crochet and garden. My garden became a haven until the rats moved in. It is an underground, I mean, this is a lower basement, and it's a nice flat, and I've been very happy here. I moved about 3 years after Jack died, and it's the last place on earth he would ever have approved of. But it's been great. It's been actually great until, you know, suddenly the dogs caught a rat, and then the rat man arrived, and he looked like a rat, of course. Well, no, he was tall and grey and a bit, you know, but he just came with a tote bag, and he put poison down, and then the rats were very clever. They started moving the bags of poison, but then they swam underneath the house, the whole house right to the front, and died on the doorstep, which put the postman into a sort of life support machine for a while. So he did come and take the rats away, wrapped them in plastic and put them in his tote bag. And I said to him, are you going, where's your van? Where did you park your car? And he said, no. He said, I'm a walk-in pest technician, he said. So I said, where are you going to walk to with 2 rats in your bag? He said, all right, I'll take the tube. So basically, it's not bad enough that we don't want to go on the tube at the moment, but the idea of sitting socially distanced from a man with 2 dead rats in his handbag is just beyond my belief. So, and, you know, then about 6 more have come. So it's lost its gloss, you can imagine, because I can't let the dogs into the garden, and I'm loving I've just got my garden to exactly where I want it to. Anyway, in other words, the lockdown has been for all of us less and more. And I guess for those of you who are disabled, and particularly, I suppose, those of you who are blind, the feeling of isolation, you know, must be something which I can't try to empathize with, but I don't know if I can. Last night I watched MasterChef, which is unusual for me because I can't stand programs about cookery. But there was a blind presenter on Celebrity MasterChef, and it was amazing what he achieved without seemingly any special, you know, sort of privileges. He managed to serve up the most wonderful food. Did anybody see it? It was really interesting. But I imagine that your sense of isolation has increased enormously as this has gone on, and doesn't really look like there's much sign of an end, does it? And you can only think about today, right? Here's what I've got to do. I need one treat. And if this is your treat today, then I'm really very honoured that you're with me today. I just say, you know, I have to visit. I have a partner who's not really well, and he's in Gerrard's Cross, and he's been my partner for about 12 years, but we've never shared accommodation permanently. So he has a carer, so I go there 2 or 3 times a week, and then, you know, I like to see my grandchildren. At the moment, I have 2 grandchildren, a girl of 8, Ava, and a boy of 5, Sasha. And they're absolute comedians, yeah, which is, you know, what you want in a kid. And for this period of time, you know, I absolutely adore their company, and they seem to like mine. We're rehearsing together a play, which I wrote for them, called The Gorilla and the Unicorn. And the hilarious thing was that I told that to some reporter from The Observer, which is, of course, The Guardian, and they printed it as The Gorilla and the Unicorn, Guerilla. And I thought that was so Guardian, isn't it? You know. Anyway, it's about a lost unicorn and a rather bolshy gorilla. So he's got a gorilla suit and she's got a horn. And when I can really get their attention properly, when I can, you know, we do proper warm-up exercises, and we do tongue twisters, and I say, come on, Sasha, what's your tongue? He says, Betty bought butter, but the butter Betty bought was bitter, so Betty bought another board of butter to make the bitter butter better. They really get onto it, you know. They're loving it. So this Sunday, my daughter-in-law's mother, Lalia, and her husband, and Tina's sister, Alina, they're all coming to the garden in Ealing. It has to be fun weather, where we've put up the scenery, and we had one rehearsal yesterday, which was a bit of a disaster. But, you know, Dr. Theatre, I tell them, it will all come out in the wash, and Lalia will love it, whatever they do, because, you know, because they're who they are. So I like to see them, and I like to see, my daughter has been in my bubble. So Amy is a playwright, and she comes most Friday nights, if I'm not at Guido's, and she's been, in fact I've been painting her. I sketched her, and then I painted her. I'm going to show you. I realise as I do that many of you who are blind will not be able to see this, so it's really rather a showy-offy moment, and I'm sorry for that. But it is what she really is what she looks like. And I wanted to paint it because that chair, there's a tan leather chair that she's in, is being sold next week, because it's not a chair for anybody round about my age, you know. I had to sell my two-door car, which I adored, because I was having to take people out of the back seat with a warm spoon or pull them out by their feet. And now I have to jack in my beautiful leather chairs, because people can get in them, but they can't as hell get out of them. So, so that's going. So what else? What else have I done in lockdown? I have worked, because I was asked to do Celebrity Gogglebox. Oh, I turned down all of those things, like, you know, Strictly and Marigold Hotel, and, you know, anything where I think it's all about humiliation, I've turned down. And now I find myself with Giles Brandreth, who's a sweetie, and every Saturday afternoon for the past 7 weeks, we're finished now, I go to his house in a mask and gloves and in a sealed taxi. And we sit in a room, and we don't see the director or the cameraman. We put on our own microphones, and we sit in his front room, and they film us on 2 locked off cameras, which means the cameras are there, but if you stand up, you sort of disappear. And they give us food, and we have to watch these programs. And between you and me and the garden, they're never programs that I would watch, except this week there's a David Attenborough program, Planet 2, and he is God, isn't he? Let's face it. When we go, it will be David Attenborough we answer to. And it's just this excerpt about cuttlefish who change colour when they're mating and just get like electric strobes and things. And it's really fascinating, and film Basic Instinct. So there were a few things this week that I would have watched, but mostly it's been something like Naked Attraction, and it has no attraction for me. I was deeply shocked. I realised how prurient I've become over the years. Like, just turned, you know, Arthur Miller said, one day you wake up and find yourself shaving your father's face. And it's such a brilliant quote, because I have turned into Zelma, that's for sure. And she was, of course, something of a muse to me, because she was just so funny. She never realised just how funny. She'd say, why does everybody laugh when I say anything? I don't get it. But she just, and of course, a lot of Beattie was my mother, although not quite so. She was softer. But I did meet someone after my mum had died who said, "Oh, your mother, wasn't she a character?" And I said, "Oh, she was." She said, "You know, we lived in the same flat," she said. And one morning I said to your mother, "Oh," I said, "do you know, I looked at myself in the mirror this morning, and all I could see was creped skin and lines and wrinkles. And my mother said, oh, I've got a mirror like that. And it's so typical of her because she meant it. She wasn't making a joke. She meant it. So she had a kind of twisted logic. Like, do you remember George Burns and Gracie Allen? You know how you say, Gracie, tell them about your mother. Gracie, oh, she'd say, my Auntie Susan. Now, and she'd go off. And my mum was like that. And someone else told me that she'd been in a cafe with Zelma, and the waitress had come up and said, oh, Mrs. Lipman, you don't alter, do you? This is very hot. How's your Maureen? Is she still doing the stage? Oh, isn't that lovely? Listen, I'll bring you a menu in a minute. You look marvellous. I'll be back. And she said, your mother said, I've never seen her in my life before. And she put weight on. And that was you know, that's what you extrapolate from the woman. But also she was ooh, into oof. Ooh, aren't they low lives? She always called, and actually a lot of the people on that programme, she would have said, ooh, our Maureen's on a programme with a load of low lives, she would have said, because it's all F this and F that, and they sit there spooning pizza in, anyway, I get into trouble for saying that, because nowadays, you get into trouble for saying anything, so you've got to be really careful. And anything remotely to do with being controversial about gender or controversial about Israel is going to be picked up, and your life is going to be made hell. And people like, you know, Germaine Greer, who, let's face it, without her, we would have had to ask our husband for permission to buy a washing machine. You know, she changed, she revolutionized feminism, and now she's not allowed a platform at leading universities. And when you start banning, then it's kind of the beginning of fascism. And when you read, you know, the stuff that's said about Israel, a place which was founded primarily to protect Jews, and when you hear the stuff that even some Jews are saying about Israel, you realize it's held in a completely different, as they call it, level playing field to any other country on earth, because we see what's going on in China with the Uyghur people and the concentration camps there, not to mention the Yemen and Sudan and Burma. Burma's been repressed by hideous military generals for 50 years. Nobody seems to care about that. You never see Jeremy Corbyn marching against Burma. So we are judged, as always, on different standards. And my thought is that I've always been a proud Jew. I've always talked about it affectionately. Certainly when Jack wrote Bar Mitzvah Boy, there was a stirring amongst the Jewish population of fear that by revealing life in a Jewish household as funny and as maybe flash maybe occasionally, and worried about what the neighbours think occasionally, by revealing it in its normalcy, that you were in some way endangering our standing in society. So we can never really relax. I don't think it did that, but you might say that for a long while Jewish people were very popular and regarded as sort of funny and exotic, and you could make jokes, but not anymore. Not anymore. We're on the edge of another period of anti-Semitism, and of course, as somebody pointed out, we're the canary in the mine, aren't we? Because when they start attacking us, then they're starting attacking everyone. And you could sit here and worry yourself sick about Boris leading a populist Brexit-based government, which is effectively led by Dominic Cummings, as far as I can see, unelected Dominic Cummings. And obviously we have a maniac in charge in the United States. And the maniac seems to be pro-Israel, which does not do us any favours at all. You know, what do you do when your friend's friend is an enemy? How do you, you know, if anybody behaved like Donald Trump in your house, wouldn't you give him a smack? Yeah, wouldn't you just say, go to your room and don't come back until you learn some manners? But he is the president of the United States, and it's such an embarrassment to the world. And it's embarrassment to us when we side with him. So, yes, we are living in interesting times, as the Chinese say. And on a personal level, I'm often frightened, and I find it hard to sleep through the night, but that may be because I'm 74, so now you can work out when I was born. It may be that, there comes a point where you don't sleep the whole night through. And lots of my girlfriends don't sleep either, and I always think we should have some kind of a signal, where we can just say, ring without waking someone up. We could just flash a light or something to say, are you awake? Do you want to talk? What are you reading? Are you having milk? Are you having nutmeg? Are you having a biscuit? Which is usually what I'm having at 3 o'clock in the morning, which is fine when you're not working, but you do worry about getting bags under your eyes and not being able to remember. Hey, this is not supposed to be depressing. This is just supposed to be me showing my weaknesses so that you can feel strong. So yeah, it's been a long career. I'm in my 52nd year in this business that there's apparently no business like. And I've been incredibly lucky. I've always worked. Why is that? Because I've never been a beauty, although when I look back at pictures of myself at that age when I started, I'm absolutely astonished. I think, why didn't I know that I was quite attractive? Why did no one tell me? Well, because I wouldn't have believed them, but I always brushed up for the occasion. But my mother was really beautiful, and she always looked. I always thought that she looked at me with disappointment. But then, isn't that the most common thing that girls feel about their mothers? She definitely wanted curly hair, or curly hair, or curly hair, as they called it in Hull, and she would not have approved of this grey bob. Ooh, I don't know why she's done it. Ooh, she would have said. But what a relief, what a total relief not to have to, throughout this period, not to have to sit in the hairdressers for 2 hours and then get a cut another hour. Oh, it's just wonderful. And as providing that you really don't overheat it, then I think grey hair can be as attractive as any other kind of hair. I sort of based it on Anne Bancroft, who's a great actress and always looked kind of steely, elegant, So, but yeah, most of my friends are now in a place where they've got magenta roots and black hair. So I'm quite grateful because this is pretty easy. What else? Yoga. I've done quite a bit of yoga, which is not brilliant for me. I've got hypermobility, so therefore, I could. When I was a kid, I was really double jointed. I'm going to show you this horrible thing that I can still do. Yeah, so I've got hypermobility, but I love yoga, and so I do that most mornings. Walking with friends, yeah, in the park, which is quite near. Walking with the dog, but actually, no, I haven't been to a restaurant since March. And on Gogglebox the other day, they said, would you like some, and we talked about takeaways, and I said to Giles, have you had a takeaway since you've been? And he said, no, I haven't. I said, what would you have? And he said, probably a Thai curry. And I said, oh, I'd have fish and chips. Oh God, I come from Hull where fish and chips were really good. And they said, the voice came through saying, would you like some fish and chips? Pardon? Would you like some fish and chips? Yes. And they brought me big paper full of fish. Absolutely the best thing I've ever eaten. So in a way, this deprivation, it makes you realize just how much we take things for granted, doesn't it? And like, sometimes the same from your point of view, I'm sure, when you're disabled, is that we all need to walk in each other's shoes for a while. When Guido is sometimes in a wheelchair, and just pushing a wheelchair, just looking at the pavements and what you have to negotiate. And it's better, you know, if we could all do that, if we could all have sort of Simply Blind just for a day, simulated, and then we'd understand, because it is very hard for most people to put themselves into other people's shoes, isn't it? I mean, I do it for a living, so it's not that hard for me. But certainly in terms of bereavement, I found that after Jack died, there was a sort of period where I was allowed to be miserable. But it was about 3 or 4 months. And then you were expected to go back to being the life and soul of the party. And really not to talk about that person very much. That person that you spent 35 years with, and you were always Jack and Maureen, Bill and Edie, Don and Shirley, you know. And suddenly you're expected to accept your role as the woman at the end of the table, and not be boring about the fact that you're now on your own. And I found that there were some people who really got it and understood what was needed, and there were some people, good friends, not their fault, who just got it wrong about what you needed. And of course I was lucky, because I could talk about my old man, because I could talk about his work. And you know, the other day we did a Zoom for High Cancer, which is a very good charity based in North London, well, and in Manchester. They've got branches in Glasgow now. And Louise Hager, who'd founded it, she found a play that Jack had written. In fact, it was the last thing he'd ever written. And it was a 10-minute play about a boy, Jewish boy, telling his parents on Friday night that he's got testicular cancer. And, you know, it wasn't one of his funniest pieces, obviously, but it was beautiful. And I managed to get Howard Jacobson to play the grandfather. He hasn't been out at all. He hasn't even had a walk since March, Howard. And I got David Baddiel to play the husband, and I played the wife. And then 2 great young people joined us, all on Zoom. And then on the night, we could not get David Baddiel's mic to work. So it turned into what my dad would have called Ash and Blotty. But nonetheless, even then, you know, people said to me, oh gosh, you know, it came through and you should do it again. And it was a good idea. It was a good fundraiser. So now I'm wondering if, oh, the other thing is Coronation Street. I should mention that, yeah. I was in Coronation Street in 2002, I think it was. Jack and I were on a ship somewhere, and we got the call to the captain's office to say, would I take over the Rover's Return for 2 weeks, because Julie Goodyear had had a meltdown. Well, of course, in her day, they only did it 3 times a week. And now it's 7 episodes, isn't it? So it's just constant. And you literally go on the set, read your lines, block your lines, which means move it around the room, and then do it. And that's it. So it's hard work. But when I went back and took over the Rover's Return, I was in it for 2 weeks only. It was a good character, Lillian somebody. And she was very like Annie Walker, actually. She was rather snooty and not very nice. But 2 weeks later, Julie Goodyear got better. So that was the end of me. And then this time, I just changed my agent after 17 years. And the agent said to me, would you like to play this part in Coronation Street? And I thought, well, you know, in a way it's like a circle, because Jack wrote episode 13, and he was friends with Tony Warren. They started at Granada on the first day. And so I went back. When I went back, it was episode 8,470. And immediately I felt at home. I felt at home with the character. She's tough and abrasive. I knew a lot of women like that when I was growing up. They keep trying to give her a soft center, and I keep fighting it because of Jack. I avoid sentimentality. I mean, I quite like sentiment, but not sentimentality. And there's a lot of it about, particularly when it comes to things like VE days and things, nostalgia. And the boy who plays my grandson, Tyrone, Alan, he's been in it practically since he was a fetus. So he's just a wonderful young man. He's professional, and he doesn't mind my sort of, you know, ad-libbing a bit. I don't do it a lot, but he would disagree with that. He's on the balls of his feet, and we just throw stuff at one another, not literally, but language-wise, and that's great fun. You know, we're often acting in a balsa wood set with 2 kids and a dog, and no idea where else Evelyn sleeps, because there's no upstairs in the actual house. You know, there's the front of the house, which has got no, just the front, so you can just go in the door and come out again. And then in the studio, there's the actual set, the Dobbs. And every time I go in the set, I go, the Dobbs house, because, you know, the counter slide and the kettle won't work, and you've got to tell them if you want the sink to have water in that day. And I like to do things when I'm acting, you know, I mean, acting is doing, isn't it? So, yeah, so they've been very sweet to me. They've been very accommodating about the things I like and the things I don't like. And the people are generally very nice. But of course, when I go back in September, when they take the Wrinklies back, then, first of all, I won't be able to go on the train. I'll either have to drive, or they'll have to send for me like a package. And then we're going to be in different groups, red, yellow, green, and we never meet the other group, and there'll be no canteen, and there'll be no dressing rooms, and you do your own makeup, and you have the same director for everything. So it's going to be very different. And my dear friend, she's become a good friend, Rula Lenschke, who was playing Bill Roach's love interest. He's 87, so it's love, but it's not that much interest. Anyway, they've let her go. So, and we were sharing a flat together, and it was just hilarious fun, because she's very she's more of a balabuster than I am. I tend to have a backpack, and I think she brings rugs and lamps. So moving her out has just been ridiculous. So we've still met up for a walk every week, and yeah, I'd like to work with her again. And that's it, really. I mean, as far as the future is concerned, I'm not thinking about it. As long as my kids stay symptom-free, and my dog is nearly 15, so I'm not thinking about that. And as long as we're, as they used to say, as long as you've got your health, that's all that matters. Today is all that matters. Kindness and thoughtfulness, and just not letting everything get you down. You know, it's hard. I mean, I'm living in this flat with just, my PA lives at the front of the flat, and thank God for her, because she, you know, she takes care of the dogs. And but it is hard living with a person who you don't go to bed with at night. You know, even that's hard. Let's face it. Sometimes, you know, it is lonely. But then we, you know, we came into the world alone. We go out of it alone, and in between, we're stardust, aren't we? So, would you like to ask Stardust a question, anybody? I wonder. I'm slightly running out of interesting things to say about myself.
We've actually got quite a few questions lined up for you.
Okay.
To be organised. That was so interesting, and you're so funny. Thank you. Okay, so I think the first person is not actually online today, so I will ask the question. Is that correct, Louise? Jonathan?
Yeah, no,
Graham?
I don't know where he is. He was the first person to actually send a question in, and I can't see him.
Okay, well, I'll ask his question on his behalf. So, Jonathan asks, as the queen of the famous BT ad, did people actually think her name was BT and that her son had an ology? So I think he's saying, did people think you were BT yourself and that your son had an ology? That's Jonathan's question.
Okay. Yeah, BT was a funny old period in my life, because who knew? I'd never done a commercial before. And I've only just done one since. And it became massive. You know, when I die, that's what they're going to put in the obits. BT drops dead, you know, because who would have thought? That's what it sort of allies up to what I was saying before about the Jewish thing. It came at a time when we were very popular, and in actual fact, Richard Phillips, who created the commercial, did a clever thing, because nobody's child phones them often enough, right? So it could have been a Chinese mother, it could have been a Nicaraguan mother. You know, it struck a chord with, particularly with editors in magazines for some reason, newspaper people, and it became huge. It grew and grew and grew, and it shocked me to the core, because I had not considered myself to be a Jewish actress. And there was no need to in those days. You know, I mean, obviously there are some parts that I would not get. You know, I once played in Neil Simon's Chapter 2, and the character was an Irish Catholic, and Milton Schulman famously wrote, Maureen Lipman playing an Irish Catholic is like Barbara Streisand playing Mother Teresa. So, you know, you could circumnavigate all manner of parts. I played the Princess of France. I could do Shakespeare. I could do Goldsmith when I was at the Old Vic in the Laurence Olivier Company. I played Molly Malone in the front page. I've done everything. But somehow after Beatty, it did kind of put a stamp on my head that said, Jewish actress. And I've had to fight my way out of that. And as you can see by the fact that that's the first question, I haven't succeeded. That's, you know, the difference is that now I've accepted it. You know, for a time, I could not go into a restaurant without somebody going as I sat down, you know. And the ology thing, oh, please, everybody thinks that they're the first and only person to say, I bet you've still got an ology, haven't you? And I go, yeah, that's funny.
Okay, thank you. So now we are going to
Sorry,
ask.
I didn't really.
Sorry.
Debbie, I didn't really answer the question, which was, do people think that it was real? I can't account for, you know, the people who think that everything on television is real and that nothing has an alternative agenda. But, you know, the boy who played my grandson, Jacob Krzyzewski, became an actor. He was the son of a friend of mine. He became an actor, and you know, he's now got 3 kids. And I think you have to accept that it was just a commercial. Yes. Next question.
Ah, thank you. Well, the next question is going to be asked by the person in person. So, June Leader, can we find June and unmute June?
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
loud and clear.
Maureen, many years ago, I read a couple of your books. I loved them. I'd like to ask you, do you intend or have you thought of writing more of experiences? They were so funny and it just appealed to me so much.
Thank you, June. I did in the end write 9 of them. So if you look in the, you know, on the sort of dump bins on various sites, you will find some of more of those books. And I finished off Jack's autobiography, which is an interesting one, called by Jack Rosenthal.
Really?
But I wrote those books because I always wrote on the back page of magazines. So I always had my own page in Options, in She, in Good Housekeeping, and that way I had a diary. You know, I've always got a story on the go, but by the time a few weeks have passed, it's gone. Like, you know, today I'm telling you about the rats, it's gone, but I won't remember that in a couple of weeks. I've got a really strange memory, and I would like to write another one, and I probably have enough columns from Standpoint magazine and various papers that I've written things in. I've probably got enough for about a quarter of a book, and that's what I should really be doing now. But you know, I'd have to ask my daughter, who has a fantastic memory and keeps a diary, because you have to, you know, you have to keep a diary and to remember all this. The number of people who say to me, "Oh God, when you said so and so, do you remember when this?" And I, you know. So yeah, have a look for the other 7 books. That'll keep you going. I had an amazing experience once with a man who wrote me a letter, and he never put on his address. I could never write back to him, but basically his wife had been reading my book and chuckling all the way on a long journey they did. They were bringing a boat back from somewhere. He got rather irritable with her chuckling away. So in the end, she would read bits out to him. And one of the bits was that about my staying with friends in Skibbereen in Southern Ireland and going in a dinghy to Bushes in Ballymaloe. No, not Ballymaloe. I always forget the name of the place. Anyway, to have a smoked salmon sandwich at Bushes. And she said to him, when we get back, let's do that. Let's take the boat and sail around and go to that place Maureen Lipman goes in Ballymaloe, wherever it is. It begins with G. And then he said, unfortunately, she had a diagnosis of aggressive cancer, and I lost her. And he said, so I thought, well, I'll do that myself. I'll do what she wanted to do. And he took the boat and he sailed into the harbour and he moored up and he got into Bushes and he ordered a smoked salmon sandwich and half a pint of Murphy's. And he said he heard her laughing. And he said it was so clear that he looked around to see if she was there. And I was at the next table. I was sitting at the next table. And that's, you know, he heard her laugh and then he saw me. I only went once a year. So, you know, you do have these weird experiences and you want to write them down because I'm sure that loads of other people have these experiences, but they don't talk about them, you know. And writing a book sort of seals the experience. It makes it, right, that's happened. And now I can put it aside and move on. You know, use it as a story when I'm talking to June.
Yeah, yes. Or just one little thing. I remember, I don't know whether it was your first foray into television, a tea time serial when you first started. I can't remember the name.
A sitcom.
Sorry, a sitcom. Yes,
not Agony.
Sorry.
Was it Agony?
Yes.
The Agony columnist.
Very long time ago.
Oh, it's a long time ago. It was in the late 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
But it was very popular, but it was never shown again. I think there's some reason. I think Anna Rabin wrote the original synopsis and first scripts, and I think she's put a block on it. It's my opinion because it's never even shown on UK Gold. So I've met so many gay people in my life who said that was the only thing about gay people ever on television, and it helped me to transition, you know. So it was a funny show. Simon Williams, of course, delightful Simon Williams, and Maria Charles, who is actually played the mother in Bar Mitzvah Boy, played my mother. And Maria, I think, is still alive. It must be 100. So yeah, that was Agony. The only other sitcom I did around that time was called All at Number 20. It was about a widow who had lodgers, and I think it was the first thing that Martin Clunes ever did.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, June. Thank you very much, June. And now we move to our fundraising director, Rachel. Rachel has the next question, and I'm going to just give a shout out to Rachel today to say happy birthday to you as well.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Maureen. Lovely to speak to you.
Many happy returns of the day.
Thank you. It's lovely to be 21 again. I wish. As you can probably tell by my accent, I'm a fellow Northerner with your Coronation Street hat on. I'm a massive Corrie fan. Just recently been to the tour at the new studio tour. And I just wanted to ask you 2 questions, actually. First of all, how are you finding life up north? And second of all, where's the romance going with Arthur?
Well, of course, I'm not up north, Rachel.
When you are up north.
when I slipped back into Manchester, as easy as pie. You know, I spent 15 months in Manchester in 1970. It's where I met Jack. It's where We lived for a while. My daughter was at university there, and it's a great place. You know, I mean, that metro system really works. We could do with that in London, and I haven't seen much of the nightlife because you know, I'm stuck at Media City, which is also very beautiful, strange, weird, like Canary Wharf, but I quite like it. The first time I went for Coronation Street, I stayed in a hotel. I've probably stayed at the Midland actually when I first went up in Manchester, and I went to the desk and I said, "Is there a little family-run restaurant around here?" And she said, "Do you want Wetherspoons?" And I said, "No, I don't." "Okay, don't worry." And I walked out and I found this little street that was full of restaurants, and it was summer and people were all outside. And I thought, my God, this is like Amsterdam. And then I saw all these drag queens walking into the restaurant, and more drag queens. And then I watched down the road, and there were men dressed up as women and women dressed up as men. And I phoned my daughter and I said, "I'm in this really strange place in Manchester. It's all, everybody's in drag." "Oh," she said, "Mom, you've gone into Canal Street. That's the gay area. That's the drag area. Go out." I said, "Oh, it's fine. I'm happy in here. They seem to like me." And, oh, there's a lot of that going on. It's a very welcoming sort of a place, you know, so that's not a problem. Where is the romance going with Arthur? He's a nice actor, Paul Copley. I've never worked with him before. He's very sweet and very dapper, and we get on very well. But I've told the producers, please do not make Evelyn take her vest off, because it would not be a nice sight. And I think she'd make his life misery. And I hope it turns into a friendship, you know. I mean, I think the relationship with Roy is very nice, very interesting, because I don't think she just thinks he's weird and he just thinks she's normal. So he's a lovely actor, David Nielsen, and a really nice man, lives in Hampstead Garden Suburb. So I hope they keep the thing going, but I hope that I don't have to do any bonk busting.
I hope you're not missing Cerberus too much.
Cerberus is a lovely dog and very, very good, very hard to keep in the room. That's why I have to have a lot of meat on my person. But he's a lurcher, and they're the most beautiful dogs, lurchers, and kind and loving, and he is a bit nicer than mine, who's a Basenji and a real diva.
Oh, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And now we're moving to Shirley Silver. Shirley, it's your turn now.
Hello, Maureen. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah.
You can?
Yeah.
Yes. It's really a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to this particular Zoom. My question is, have you ever experienced anti-Semitism in your work as an actress or actor, as we're supposed to say, and how did it manifest itself?
It's hard to know, because it might operate under the sheet, as it were, because there would certainly be certain parts that I wouldn't be considered for. I mean, I should be doing Chekhov, and if I was doing Czech, because my grandparents came from Russia, but it would always be an English Rose who was playing Madame Ranevsky, and that's the way the business was always worked. But now, of course, if a black actress, an actress of colour, wanted to play that part, then probably that would be okay. Certainly anybody can play Shylock. They don't have to be Jewish, or indeed Fiddler now. So I'm sure that there are some parts that I just haven't been considered for, because I'm so openly Semitic and so openly Jewish, defensive of my tribe, and will always stand up and say so. Obviously the Corbyn thing particularly so. So that's, under the sheets, as I say, has probably gone on throughout my career. I've noticed that the only directors who've really given me a chance to do English classics have been Jewish. Elijah Mishensky, Colin Schindler, you know, in the later years. Anyway, so that's a side of it I couldn't really say. But as far as direct, obviously, when I was when it got out that I was going to play Joyce Grenfell, yes, I got some sort of sick letters saying, "Keep your hands off Joyce. She was English," which of course she wasn't. Her mother was American and her father was half American. But that, you know, you are dealing with bigots. And bigots don't want to hear the truth. They have an agenda, and they have certainty, and certainty is a very dangerous thing, because we should all be open to having our opinions changed. So I did get some letters which I kept just in case any incidents happened. And whenever I make a statement in the press about anti-Semitism, I'm always a little bit careful. I might look under my car or be very careful before I go to the front door. But on the whole, I haven't had a difficult time. I've always worked, because I think I'm quite a useful actress. I can turn my skills to quite a lot of things, and I like to do that. I think someone going into the business now might find it a bit more difficult, frankly.
Thank you very much, Shirley. Thanks for your
Maureen.
question. We're now going to try to find Gloria Alexander. Is Gloria?
She is. She might need to unmute
Yes.
herself.
I'm
Perfect.
here.
Perfect.
Oh, you're there.
Hi, Maureen.
Hello, Gloria.
I think you partially answered my question. I absolutely love you in Corrie, and your one-liners just crack me up. And I'm wondering whether you get any chance to put your own input. Like you might say, I'd rather not say it that way.
Yeah.
I'd rather do it this way.
I try to keep to the script as much as I can, but there are so many different script writers that sometimes I feel that Evelyn wouldn't say it that way. And I always ask the producers, I make notes and I write to them and I say, could I say this? And sometimes they say yes, and sometimes they say no. And that's it, I take that. But yes, there is a fair bit of Lipman creeping in, but also you have to say that the writers do start writing for the character once they've got to know what you're doing.
Oh, they're fantastic, yeah.
So,
I mean, when you chat,
yeah,
it's fantastic.
So I think you know, they know that I'm not going to say anything which is going to spoil the show or the character. But yeah, you have to look at any character through the eyes of the character, and in comedy, that's, you know, it's very useful.
Well, she can be quite sharp, I thought.
She is. She's not a particularly sympathetic character, but that's always more fun to play, isn't it? You know, the baddies are always what is it? The devil gets the best tune.
Yeah, but underneath, she's got a very warm heart. I mean, when she's with the children.
Yeah, sometimes she has. I mean, she's like all of us. She's a mixture of selflessness and kindness, and sometimes she does the right thing, and sometimes she does the wrong thing. And it's great. I have great fun with Jim, who plays Dev in the shop, and I hope they give me some more with him, because that was funny at the beginning, but lately they haven't. I might not be in his group, you see, when I get back, so I might never have any scenes with him. I don't know. And I always want more scenes which are about nothing. In other words, it is quite plot driven, because all the soaps are very plot driven, and they rival each other in who's got the most bodies buried and the most domestic abuse and the most murder. But I like it when there's just, sometimes you can look on YouTube and you can see some of the early scripts with Ina Sharples and Martha and Minnie in Snug. Oh, Ina, oh, I don't think we're going to go and see that film. We was rather hoping to go to the dogs. You're going where I say we're going. And it's all about, it's about nothing, but it's wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. Character dialogue. And of course, when Coronation Street, we'd never seen anything like that. I mean, you know, Laurence Olivier went down on his knees in the corridor to Doris Speed. You know, it was a bit like the BT adverts. It crossed all barriers. Rich people liked it, poor people liked it, foreigners liked it. You know, it still plays all over the world. Yeah, I mean, it's a question of
Sorry.
Okay. Oh dear. Can we? Is that Gloria? That's
Yeah, sorry,
yeah.
it's gone now.
Gloria,
Anyway,
I'm going to say
thank
thank
you
you
for
to you,
answering that.
Gloria. Thank you very much, Gloria. And we're going to
Thank you.
move on to Malcolm Westbury, please.
Can you unmute yourself, Malcolm?
I can see Malcolm.
I can. Okay, you're unmuted, Malcolm.
Good morning, Maureen.
hello, welcome.
Hi. My question would be, I recently watched one of my favourite films, which was At the Junction. And did you have a really good time making that film? Because the dialogue between you, Adrian Poster, Liz Fraser was absolutely superb. And I always wondered why they never made any follow-up to that, or even some kind of TV series. But it looked as if everybody was really having a great time on that set.
Well, it was practically my first job, Malcolm, so I didn't know from my elbow. You know, I mean, I was living in a shared flat with Leslie Joseph in Battersea, and I just got the part through pretending to be Cockney, which of course I had to learn. And then I've told the story many times, but once I got the part, I kept it up for 13 weeks. I never let anyone know that I wasn't a genuine Cockney, because I thought they'd take the part away from me. And did we have a good time? I mean, it was a very low budget film. The script, I think, was by Roger Smith, and it was pretty much taken directly adapted from Nell Dunn's book. So there wasn't much bending of the dialogue, but there was a good feeling between Adrienne and myself. She was a very good actress. I don't know why she didn't continue in her career. She was brilliant in that film. And then the casting of someone like Hilda Baker as the abortionist, you know, that was very bold. Peter Collinson, the director, cast me straight out of drama school. I'd done one job. And it turned out that he was pretending to be a Cockney as well. He was actually from Grimsby. So we were both doing the same act. And it was very hard work, late night shooting. I think it was Susan George's first job. She had a tiny part. And Susie Kendall, I still see her sometimes, very nice. Was married to Dudley Moore, very nice woman, very bright. And it took 13 weeks to shoot it. I didn't know that you couldn't, I didn't know anything. I still don't understand cameras, lights. I've never ever got it behind a camera and understood what it is to be on film. So when it came out, we premiered in Clapham at the Clapham Odeon, and I think I borrowed a dress. I remember borrowed a dress. I wanted to look quite different from the characters. I had my hair cut really short, like a gammon, which didn't really suit me. And I borrowed this dress that was white crepe with big turquoise flowers all over it, and feet. It had feet in it. So it was a wet night, needless to say. And of course, nobody recognized me because, you know, I didn't look anything like the character of the film. So yeah, they talk about a learning curve. And then Adrian and I went on to do a TV series together of sort of sketches called Don't Ask Us, We're New Here. And then I went up to Manchester, and then I met Jack. So it was very early days. And you know, it's a better film now than it was at the time somehow, because at the time, Ken Loach's film, he's a great friend of the anti-Semites, Ken Loach's film on television had made a massive impact and in fact changed the law. So everybody thought it wasn't, it's a bit like Talking Heads now, everybody thought that this film was too glossy. But when you look at it now, it's held up very well. Yeah, so there you go.
I think that my wife actually went to school with Adrian Poster.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was. She's
a few years ago.
Yeah, a very, very funny actress. And
Yeah, she was terrific in it.
Does now. I haven't seen her for years.
Thank you very much. That was great film. Great film.
Thank you very much, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Maureen, we've only got a couple more questions, if that's okay. We are going to move to Carol Zucker now, if we can, please. Carol, are you there with your question? Carol, could you unmute yourself, please? That's great.
Oh,
thank
hello,
you.
Hello, Maureen.
Hi, Carol.
I was just, well, like to know, do you think Sir Keir Starmer is a good leader for Labour? And do you think he could ever beat Boris? I know it's a lot to answer now at the end, but I just wanted your opinion on it.
Carol, I think he's done very well so far. I don't think he'll ever be Boris, and I think that's a good thing. I think he's sound. They're going to send him up a lot because he's got a difficult voice, but he's a clever man, and they're already sort of mocking his hair and various things like that, which, you know, you accept, I think, if you're a politician. But I think everything he's done so far in the House, particularly, he doesn't let Boris off the hook. And Boris' lack of attention to detail is now dangerous. And I think if you heard him in the House saying, "Have you actually read this report, Boris?" And Boris saying, "Well, no, I'm aware of it." Now, clearly, he hadn't read it, had he? I think he did the right thing with Rebecca on Bailey. Good riddance. Although I did feel at the time that it was slightly contrived, the whole thing. Come in. Slightly contrived because it was a week before the Israelis were supposed to annex that territory. And the fact that Maxine Peake, and she's her constituent and friend, the fact that she suddenly raised this issue of Israel being responsible for the death of George Floyd. I mean, please. Somebody asked me about it, and I said, well, the thing about that is that actually, you know, I have a pullover that I bought, and the sleeves have gone baggy. Do you think that's Israel's fault? Because that's how it gets. Right?
No.
I mean, I've actually followed John
sorry, I'm in the middle of something. I can't speak. No, sorry, I'm speaking to someone else. Hello. Yes. So you don't think he could ever beat Boris?
I think at the end of this 4 years, that Boris's lack of capability and his natural laziness, and let's face it, this is a pandemic that nobody could have dealt with well. Nobody's going to come out of this as having done well. But the fact that our death rate is 45,000 is preposterous, and the fact that we still are not able to test is, I mean, who can understand that? And I keep hoping that the Israelis will come out with a vaccine and only give it to those people who agree that they've got a right to exist.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I have asked actually if I could have a meeting with him so that I could ask him what's in the Labour Party for me now. But I think he's a good guy for us because we don't essentially. We don't matter. We're too few to matter. So when he does defend us in this way, he is going out on a limb because the other votes mean so much more, and he's sacrificing a lot of votes by this. So I think you have to take your hat off to him. I just always wonder why Harriet Harman isn't given more, because she did such a good job when the Labour Party didn't have a leader. And she's so dedicated. She's now the longest serving member of the Labour Party cabinet. So I think they ought to give her more of a say. She's a woman. She's a mother. She should be back there. Miliband, well, I don't know about him, but he's there. And I think they have a chance, because I think everybody, look, it's going to be 12 years of Conservative government
12 years.
by the time this lot goes. So I think if they don't make, if it's a rotten job being in opposition and you can't ever do anything, and if you only had a Prime Minister who said, look, we're in a time of national emergency, and Starmer suggested this, let's stop bickering at each other at the box, let's stop bickering, and let's put our clever legal heads together. Don't keep saying, oh, you're a lawyer, what's your brief, Calvin Klein. Don't mess about being an idiot. Use the brains of the opposition, use the Liberals as well, the Lib Dems. What's all this partisan stuff? It just stops anything from happening. So yes, let's give the man a chance. He's a lot better than what we've had.
Certainly better than what we had. Thank you, Maureen.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. And finally, we go over to our very own Community Engagement Manager, Simone, with the last question before we just hand over to our Chief Executive.
Okay. Hi, Maureen. Can you hear
Hello.
me okay? Hi.
Hi,
I have to just say this has been amazing. I've loved it. Absolutely loved it. And we also have something in common. I hate to say rats in the garden. I won't elaborate. It's grim.
There's no, I'm afraid there's no restaurants open. No restaurants open. So the rats
So they're all...
So,
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not nice. My quick question for you is, obviously you've had the most amazing, varied career. Is there anyone that stands out that you've particularly enjoyed working with? And is there anyone that stands out that you've particularly found challenging?
Oh, lots of people that I've loved working with in my time. I did Oliver Cotton's play. Oh God, I'm losing my mind. At the Park Theatre and in town, and he and I got on really well. I've worked with Harry Shearer in the same play, Daytona. I wanted to say Dynasty for some reason. I haven't been in that. And I've worked with Rosemary Harris, who's still alive and working in America. Most of the people I worked with I've adored. I've just done a play with Martin Shaw, who was at Lambda with me, and I did a musical with Amanda Holden, and of course I did work with Hugh Jackman for a year, and it doesn't get better than that. As far as people I've never worked with, I wouldn't want to work with again, yes, there are some, and I wouldn't have the I wouldn't name them, but they know who they are. There's one particular actress who came into the play at the 5, so instead of the half, she came at the 5. So we were all in desperate. Is she going to turn up? So yeah, you don't want to work with people who are narrow. I think the thing is, who don't want to try things and don't want to engage in the game that we're in. We're so lucky to be in a childish profession where we can be, we can play. So if you don't want to do that, it's just a shame. So yeah, but I think I would say there's probably 3 in my life that in 52 years, that's not bad. And also, to be honest, if they were in the cast, I wouldn't, I would, would I work with Miriam now? I would find it very hard after all she says and does. But if it was a question of the job or her, then I would take the job,
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Simone. And I will pass over now to our Chief Executive, Lisa Wimborne. And I'll just give personal thanks to you, Maureen. Over to Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lovely to see all of you here today, and a huge thank you, Maureen, for taking the time out to share your interesting life stories with us. I could have listened to you all day. It's evident, from what you said in the beginning, that you have a real empathy for the challenges that some of our tenants face in daily life. And everybody in this current situation, is really struggling. It is a particularly difficult time. And that's why it means so much more to all of us that you've taken the time out to bring a bit of laughter, which is much needed, and some entertainment. And I really, I would say we will open you with would welcome you with open arms, hopefully one day into our buildings in person, or to come back at any stage, because really, it means so much to everybody. And I'm sure on behalf of the tenants, I'm sure they'll all give you a big round of applause. A huge, huge thank you.
You only have to ask me. I'm very bad at saying no. But also, you know, when this is over and we're all opened up again, how hard would it be to have a weekly or fortnightly Zoom with people like this? You know,
You've made the offer now, Maureen. So don't worry, we're not